Hi, Miss Coleman.
Hi, baby doll.
Put your head down.
Oh, I miss you, Noah. How are you? Sweet baby.
Good.
Yeah? Aw.
Yeah, but I kind of twist my thumb.
Oh, no.
That's better.
That's
But it's usually, it doesn't really hurt, but it's mostly kind of better.
I'm glad it's mostly kind of better. That makes me feel better. Oh, I love your face. I miss you so much.
I miss you too.
Oh, sweet boy.
Mehlville Home families and other guests, thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Christy Matthews, and I have been working with the Mehlville Home program this year as the program coordinator for grades K through 8, but also assisting with other grades. I wanted to share with you this evening a little bit about Mehlville Home. I know that some of you are thinking about this as one of your possible options, so I wanted to be certain that you had all the information possible. Before we get started, I think you might notice at the bottom of your screen, we have something called live transcription enabled. Is that populating with subtitles at the bottom right now? Perfect. If you're on your phone, you can tap the More button and you'll have an option to view the full transcript. If you're on your computer and you click on live transcript, you can either hide the subtitles or show them if you wish to see them again and you've hidden them. You can also view the full transcript as a sidebar, and you can adjust the size of the subtitles. I wanted to make sure that for all of our viewers, you were able to access those so that you would have the information as it's being shared tonight. So what is Mehlville Home? Well, we've been planning Mehlville Home as a district for a while now. The pandemic, however, just brought it up to us a whole lot faster than we had anticipated. We are excited to continue with Mehlville Home, providing this as an opportunity, an expanded opportunity for our choice learning programs that we have here through the Melville School District. We believe that it's important to keep class sizes similar to those that are the in-person classes. We follow the guidelines set out by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, just like we do in our in-person schools. And all of our teachers who will be teaching with us next year have had extensive work with us in the program this year. So they're all familiar and have been working through developing best practices for virtual education so that we can have an even better year next school year. Classes in Mehlville Home will be synchronous. That means that they're live and they're right now and they're on a schedule. They will be held daily, and we also believe that to develop those relationships with our families, it's important that our kids are present every day. Just like our teachers will be present every day. So it will be an expectation that students are logging in and that they're attending their classes so that they're getting the instruction from their teachers and also able to build those relationships with their classmates. Tonight, we're going to focus on 3 specific areas. We're going to look at the personalized learning opportunities and how those show through Mehlville Home. We'll look at what counseling services are provided, and also we'll look at exceptional learner opportunities, the services that we provide for our exceptional learners. So first of all, when we're looking at what are the opportunities for all of our students, again, the classes will be synchronous. We will be having our classes taught by our Melville School District teachers. The feedback that we were getting from our community in the surveys that we've provided and in parent communications has been that you love our Melville teachers. And we do too. We think that they do a great job. They connect, they understand the community. And so we want to make sure that they are the ones teaching our students. We think that as the teachers are working with the students, a new way or a continued way in some cases that they can continue working with students and families is through goal setting, through data tracking, through looking at the standards-based grading system, identifying what are the goals for the students, what equals a 1, what equals a 2, what equals a 3, and showing the children where they are as they progress so that students and parents and teachers are all on the same page and everyone understands what's being achieved and where extra work might be needed and what's being accelerated. We also want to be able to provide, as community spread allows and as things start opening up, we want to be able to provide opportunities for our students to explore a little bit more based on their personal interests. Being able to go on outings throughout the year based on the curricular goals. And so we'll be looking for those curriculum-based opportunities to gather during the school year. Again, that does depend on community spread and what we're able to organize at the time. We'll probably start off slowly with that and then build as we develop a system that works well. Most everything I think you'll find will be really similar to this year, again, except that we anticipate having as many of our classes as possible, if not all of them, taught by our Melville School District staff. So I know that a lot of you are curious about the schedules. From our K-5 families, a lot of the requests related to the different start times and end times, or having a common lunch period, or just trying to sync up. If you have multiple children in elementary, that was maybe really challenging, trying to juggle all of those different schedules, different lunch times, different start and end times. So to be able to work with that, we anticipate, again, because we'll have our own staff, we anticipate being able to organize a schedule that has the same start time and end time for all students. And we are going to try our very best to have those lunch times overlap so that when you have those bigger breaks, they're a bigger break as a whole family. The specials will be on a rotation between the grades because our teachers can't be in multiple places at once. So we will still see students going to their music class or art or PE classes on a rotation throughout the day. Students will be invited still to their home school events. So another concern that came up was, what do we do for 5th grade graduation? What do we do for other sorts of events? Are we still allowed to go over to Woolwind? Are we still able to go over to Beer Bomb? Of course you are. So we'll want to make sure that we have those ties still there so that you can still attend those events that you wish to attend, especially those bigger ones. But we also want to start developing our own special events for our Melville at Home crew. I don't know exactly what that'll look like, and a lot of it's just going to depend on enrollment and, again, that community spread and what our families feel safe with. Registration was another question that we had. How long is it? Do we sign up every semester? Do we sign up once a year? Well, we are going to ask you to fill out the registration, the enrollment application that you have on Parent Portal. That is for the year. However, you are only locked in for a semester. So if you determine that at semester it's not the right fit for your family, you are welcome to switch for 2nd semester back to in-person learning. We will ask that you do not switch back and forth between semesters just because everything that we're doing is really based on enrollment. All of our staffing is based on enrollment. So we want to make sure that everything is the way that it needs to be and that we have as few interruptions as possible. Curriculum and assessments was another question. Will our kids be learning the same things? Will they have the same tests as students who are in person? And the short answer is yes. We are still a part of the Melville School District. That hasn't changed. We still have our Melville teachers, and they are all familiar with the curriculum. They are still sharing those same common assessments, those same data goals. So you can anticipate your students being on pace with students who are doing in-person learning. Students who are wanting to be able to participate in other special programs will still have opportunities to be able to do that, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. Ms. Coleman was kind enough to share with us a copy of one of her weekly schedules, just so that you can see how it might be laid out. Now, this is just one schedule for one group of students. This is a sample of what it could look like. It's not definitive, but I wanted you to be able to see what a weekly schedule might look like. You'll notice in here that Mrs. Coleman, she enjoys having breakfast with her students in the mornings. And so she creates that opportunity for social time first thing in the morning while she wanders around her kitchen and makes her breakfast and enjoys her cup of coffee. And the kids do the same thing, syrupy pancakes at the kitchen table and all. Spilt milk too sometimes, I'm sure, right, Miss Coleman? But they enjoy that, and it's a really nice time just to be together and build community. You'll also notice that she still has in here all of her math class and social studies and reading. All of that will still happen. It'll all still happen in the structure. What you don't see in here is what's behind the scenes, like those one-on-one meetings and those small group meetings, because all of our teachers will still do that with their students to make sure that everybody is meeting their goals and getting the appropriate academic structures that they need for their learning to be able to meet their goals or to be able to exceed their goals and set new ones. Counseling services is another question that was brought up. So whether we have our own counselor or whether students continue to work with a counselor they're familiar with at their home school, our counselors will still, or our students and families will still have access to those counselors to be able to reach out to them if they're having any kinds of concerns, to use as a resource, to be able to find anything that you might possibly need. Everything our in-person counselors do, they will be able to do for us in a virtual setting. So you can rest assured that you'll still have access to all of that. Exceptional learner services will continue as they have been. So our students who are participating in special education and have IEPs, students with reading plans, students who are receiving English learner services or who have 504s, students who are participating in the stretch program. All of that is important and all of that will still continue. We want to make sure that we're continuing to provide those same services for our students. We are working with Mr. Smith to determine what methods will work best for our stretch students for next year. And then I'll be working also really closely with our reading services teachers and our EL teachers and our SSD teachers to make sure that whatever we put in place for next year is just as good, if not better, than what we have been doing this year. Because we all know that there are things that we want to evaluate and make sure that what we were doing is the best. And if it isn't, look for some possible solutions. So how do you enroll your child in Melville at Home? Well, I have for you here a QR code. So if you aren't already using your phone and you'd like to take a picture of this page, it will take you straight to our Melville at Home Melville School District page. And that will give you some instructions on how to access Parent Portal if that's not something that you already have saved on your phone. It'll take you straight there, and then you'll be able to select the Melville at Home 21-22 application. I want to remind you that our staffing is based on enrollment, and some families were asking about different programs like Academy at the middle school or other such, maybe Mosaic. And what I'll tell you is you need to choose what is going to be best for your family and register for that. If we have openings, continue throughout the summer. Then if you need to sign up later, you are welcome to do that and you're welcome to join us as long as we still have openings. But our deadline right now is April 30th, and that is what we're going to use to set our staffing, those numbers that come in by April 30th. If you have a child who is new to the district or you have an upcoming kindergartner, you would register first at your home school, establish residency, and enroll your child, and then they will show up on your parent portal and you'll be able to enroll them that way. All right, so I'm going to stop screen sharing now so that I can address any questions that you have. I see one in the chat here.
I have a question.
Yes.
So right now we're still doing the Melville at Home. So I decided just yet. So if I put him back in person for the next school year, and if it wasn't working, am I able to switch him back to Mehlville Home?
You are welcome to join Melville at Home at the semester if we still have spaces available. Yes.
Okay.
So we'll base our staffing for Melville at Home for the 21-22 school year on those numbers as of April 30th. And then after that point, if we have more space, then we'll be able to welcome you in.
Okay. All right. All right. So yeah, so my son's got an IEP. He's freshman right now. So I'm thinking, well, you know, my case manager said maybe he should get back into the building to get therapy, social skills, and, you know, it's best in person.
Mm-hmm.
For a child with IEP, he's got autism, ADHD. So yeah, so I was kind of thinking about, she said if it didn't work, you know, maybe you can switch back. So, but that was, thanks for answering that.
You're welcome. Kate, I see your hand is raised.
Sorry, I had trouble for a second. Yeah, so no, I didn't forget my question just now. So if they've been out of, so my son's doing Mosaic at home. If he's, so he's been out officially for a whole year from the actual building. Do you know, since Mosaic's a lottery school, like if he does another semester at home, if his spot at Mosaic's forfeited?
I
Dr.
could
Bressler?
answer.
Thank
Sure. I can answer that question. That's something, you know, as we've gone through this year, obviously, I get asked questions like this all the time, like, and so many things are new, so we just come up with new rules all the time. However, that's one thing that we have been consistent on. So with Melville at Home, and in regards to Mosaic, I have held the spots at Mosaic for the situation that we've been in, obviously, because I think this past year has been out of, you know, out of something that's been out of the control or thoughts of parents in situations. So I've held those spots up until this point. I plan to continue that based on the number. If I have, you know, 5-10 kids that are in Melville at Home that are at Mosaic, I may feel a little bit different because I'd hate to have those classrooms empty, and I would like to fill those spots. But that's a good question, something we're looking at all the time. But right now, the amount of students, I feel comfortable holding those spots at this time.
And is there, I understand for staffing, but like April 30th seems like so fast for me since we don't know what is going to happen over the summer with the virus and stuff. But is there, I know you want the registration in by the 30th, but is there like one particular direction where it would be easier, like if we kind of changed our mind what we wanted to do, like enrolling him in regular school and then trying to get him in Melville at Home? Or is there like a certain direction for those of us who are kind of on the fence that might be better?
It's a great question, actually. And I, you know, as I think about being a parent myself, I think, you know, a lot of people are trying to prepare for next year and trying to make that decision. I will tell you, and I hate to say this, but this, where we are planning and programming for next year, it's really not about the virus. You know, this is about program. Now, I would also tell you that we are making every effort. If we have spots in Melville at Home and have the staffing for that, prior to the school year starting, I am more than comfortable. In fact, I welcome the opportunity for students to enroll. But yes, I mean, it is about staffing, but it's also about planning, preparing. But right now, we have students that are moving right now from virtual back to in-person, from in-person back to virtual. I've been extremely lenient because I don't, like, again, I say, I don't feel like this is a situation that we've been dealt where people do have control of forward thinking of what they're going to do. So we have been flexible about that. In fact, I have no one where I've had to say no to. We've been able to work through this situation together. Now for next year, I can't guarantee that. I'll be very honest with you, just like I would a lottery system for Mosaic. If you have, you know, I see this as an opportunity for people to enroll in, but If those spots are taken for virtual, and someone would like to transfer that, I can't guarantee that beyond that April date. So that April date is a firm date that we are starting with. And then we're just going to make individual decisions based on individual circumstances from there.
So is that form that we're supposed to sign out, is that something we have to fill out regardless of which one we choose? Or if we don't fill it out, is it assumed we're sending them in person even
Yes.
if they're
So
virtual?
the form, Dr. Smith can correct me if I'm wrong, which happens often, but that form would be filled out if you are enrolling in Mehlville Home. If we have no form or we don't have an application, just like a lottery system, we are assuming students will be back into their home school into the next grade that they are anticipated in our system.
Okay, no more
Good
questions.
question for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions. Kate, I'm in the same position as you. My son has been in Mosaic since kindergarten. I want him to go back. There's still a small they're not going to get immunized before the school year, I feel, and I can't take the risk of my children getting it. So I was asked last week to tell Mosaic whether or not my son would return. And I started an email, and I have it saved, a draft, and I hadn't even sent it because I was just going to wait until I get a phone call. But I understand at this point in time, all that are enrolled through the Mehlville Home, I'm under the understanding that they will actually be able to go through Mehlville at Home. However, with enrollment being open until April, could you give me an idea as to how many more students would have to apply that it would then transfer over into the lottery system?
And that would be you're referring to virtual into Melville at Home lottery?
Yes, I sent an email and I asked, when would we know that our children have been accepted for the Melville at Home? And my reply was that was given to me was at this point in time, everybody that has applied will be accepted with the Melville at Home. So understanding you guys haven't really met the capacity number, but I'm sure there is a number where you're going to say, we're not going to go beyond that.
Yeah.
And
I'll say that.
so I'm kind of wondering how many more students would have to apply what is the capacity? How close are we to the capacity at this point?
So we are staffing and planning based on our community need. So right now, I'm not going to say that we need a certain number. I would say that where we are currently is still in the planning phases. So we're able to tailor our staffing, tailor our programming because of that April date. So we're able to accommodate all students in regards to the application for Melville Home for that April date. Beyond that, I can't really answer, but I will tell you that we've made a commitment to making sure that this is pulled off with seamlessly. And I can say, and thank you for the direction of Mrs. Matthews, who's here joining us today. She has pulled off a huge endeavor, and we appreciate what she's doing. But I could tell you that we are making every effort to make sure that if you put in for this, that we program and staff for those students. So as of now, I would be able to guarantee the spots as they've come in so far.
I guess my concern with that is that I'm being asked to tell Mosaic whether or not my son's going to return.
Yeah.
And I've applied with the Melville at Home, and then so many students apply. Now it's a lottery system, and my son then doesn't get into that one, and he's already been taken out of Mosaic.
Right.
But I appreciate your reply to me. I also have two more questions. One is about the middle grade students. There wasn't a lot of different options for the extracurricular courses. Would there be any possibility that the Melville at Home middle school and high school students could take some extracurriculars in building at their home school, or will there just be more options?
We anticipate having varied options for our students. We do not anticipate them going into the building, but everything continuing virtually. The teachers that we have hired will be able to run a number of different options for them. And then if we find that based on enrollment, we aren't able to run, I'm looking for something to be a little bit more similar to like the older wheel that we used to have at the middle school, where they rotate through a number of electives. If we aren't able to do that, I know that we do have vendor partners who have ramped up their game for next year and are offering new and additional options. Our
Okay.
first preference, though, is to provide those through our home district with our own teachers.
Okay, just hoping to have some more options for the.
Yes, and in the case of the wheel, the students won't necessarily be able to choose in the middle grades. We will rotate them through. So everyone will still have PE, everyone will still have health, but then we'll have a variety of courses that they'll rotate through.
Okay, and then also Mosaic is probably unique that they've kept their students, the virtual, and they've done the split grades, but that is not usually or isn't going to be the case. Is that correct? For elementary, like it'll only be a first grade teacher with first grade students.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you were saying. Yes, we do not right now anticipate grade banding, blending the grades together. However, we have to wait. All of these are so dependent on enrollment. So if we don't have enough students to run individual classes, then yes, we will look at grade banding as one of the opportunities. But our hope is that we have enough to run each class individually so that there is a first grade, there is a fourth grade, and that they're all separate and working on their own goals.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Let's see, Megan.
Yeah, I just had just something that I kind of have been having to deal with, and I wondered if in the future, like, so my daughter's doing her MAP test this week, and then I'm taking her to Forder because she wanted to meet Mrs. Dernbeck, which has been really nice. But the only problem is, like, today I had to take my son out of school, out of virtual school, and then take him again out of virtual school, which isn't that big of a deal. But I had to do the same thing for her when he had to do some testing at his school. Do you guys anticipate maybe kind of trying to anticipate those MAP tests, and then, I don't know, with other grades, or, I mean, I guess it's not a big deal, but I anticipate this happening more often. And then, like, my son has to miss like at least a half an hour, you know, 'cause he has to come with me because I'm the only one home.
Sure.
That's just, it's not a big deal, but
Dr. Smith actually loves MAP testing, so I'll let him answer the question. He's like, he loves having the kids tested, right? By the state.
Thanks, Dr. Bressler. I appreciate that. So when it comes to state tests, one of the things that is required by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is that annually we have to administer a statewide test. And so that happens in grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then high school is content specific. So what we've run into this year was that we have continued to try to work with Mehlville Home families. Many have responded and have had their students come in for the initial round of MAP testing. Some have made it very clear that, that they are concerned for a variety of reasons. And so, what we're anticipating right now is once we get through our initial round of testing, our next round, we are looking at offering a creative outdoor opportunity. So, what we have to try to do according to the state is ensure that we've given it our best effort, and we've tried to again and again this year show that we're committed to trying to do everything we can to ensure that kids can have the types of experiences maybe in which they've had before. I know that some people don't love assessment or don't love state assessment. I completely understand that. So we're just kind of stuck in the middle with regards to that. I will, I'll say when it comes to formative and summative types of assessments and experiences that kids have received in the Mehlville Home setting, our goal is to try to continue to improve those experiences that kids have had in future iterations of the program. And so, but as Ms. Matthews indicated previously, one of the things that is really important is that enrollment needs to certainly be there, because numbers always will drive programs. If you only had one kid that signed up and you had 3 elementary teachers, no one would consider that a good fiscal use of resources. So, there's a balance here of trying to figure out, and that's why I think it's been difficult lately. We just need to see what the numbers are ultimately going to be. We need to see what the interest is there. And then, certainly we'll work with individual families if there's still continued reasons why, we need to either move a different direction. We'll know more in a couple, 3 weeks. Once we know April 30th has come and gone, we'll have a better idea where we're going with the program.
And then Megan, to follow up with the other piece of the question that you were asking about with the schedule and what do you do with your younger children when you're going to pick up and drop off with the others, that's something that we can evaluate when we're looking at our program and set up for next year. When we know that MAP testing is around the corner, we can start to troubleshoot some other solutions.
Okay, that's, I mean, I'm not against any testing at all, and I'm fine even bringing her to the school. It's just, I feel bad because like Noah, he had to have some separate testing. So it was kind of like this conflict. So yeah, if you can kind of anticipate, that would be great.
So essentially, yeah, the inconvenience that sometimes cause in families, we totally get that. So I think just communicating upfront, making sure that we're listening to our parents and what things that we can do better at trying to accommodate, that's sort of the goal. I appreciate your comment and thoughts.
Teresa, thank you for your patience. What's your question?
Thank you so much. So my daughter is a student at Mosaic, but she's been doing Mehlville at Home the entire year. And I understand logistically why you need to kind of know the numbers for Mehlville at Home for now, for the fall. But, my concern, and I understand you're not making a lot of these decisions directly related to COVID, but given the increases of the variants that are, affecting younger people, and by the way, I work on ventilators for my job right now. And so I have a lot of concern about safety as it relates to my child. So, these variants are real, or at least, that's what we're seeing. There's no vaccine for kids in elementary to middle school. It doesn't look like there's going to be one immediately, and maybe not even before the school starts. So having said that, my child is in the 5th grade, so she is set to go to middle school in the fall. So she would go to Oakville Middle, and what I'm told is that she would have a place at Spartan Academy, which is the sort of Mosaic type program at Oakville Middle. But when I talked to them, they told me that I had to choose and I had to have a definite decision on what I was going to do. So I had already signed up for Mehlville at Home because right now it seems to work really well for us. I trust the program, I like the teachers, and I feel like it's the safest option for my child. So the school tells me, the in-person Spartan Academy folks are telling me, if you sign up for Mehlville at Home, then you're saying no to Spartan Academy. And if you go to Mehlville at Home and then you decide to come back in person, if things change and you're comfortable, then she may or may not have a place at Spartan Academy. So, I'm in a really difficult spot. Like, I have to decide for you guys because you have to make your decisions, and then I have to decide for them. And yet I'm dealing with a lot of unknowns right now between now and August. And, honestly, it's hard and it's difficult because I feel like I'm choosing my child's future. And I realize this is elementary school going into middle school. It's not the world, but it does affect my child's life. And she, it's affected her this year, just like it has everyone on this call's children. So I just, instead of either or, could it be an either and until a certain date instead of making a final decision before April 23rd on the next year of my child's life?
Teresa, I appreciate your question, and that's very heartfelt. And I think a lot of people on this call probably feel the same way, including us, and, I know it sounds like you're making a decision for us, but really, I'll be honest with you, it's really a decision for, we're making decisions for 10,000 kids too. So there's situations in which, like the Spartan Academy, which is at all 4 middle schools, there is a waiting list. There's kids that want, just like Mosaic or things like that. So we want to hold spots, but we also don't want to keep kids out of things when there is a spot available. So the best way that I can answer that is that when choosing something, that's something that we could guarantee for you. Not that if your mind has changed that it can't happen, but we can't guarantee that, you know. And I did say in one of my answers before too that we want to do the best we can and accommodate as much as we can, but there's going to be a point too where we'll have to make individual decisions for kids, families, depending on the situation itself. Just know that, like, we're not doing this or making these decisions because we want to make it difficult at all. And I mean, we are trying our very, very best. We have since, you know, this past March, and we understand. But the best way I can answer that is that by making that choice, it will guarantee you a spot. And you know, and I understand when the middle school says, well, then you lose your spot. Well, there are kids that are on a waiting list too. It's a domino effect, right? So we're in a situation too where we're trying to make the best decisions we can for a majority of our students. But I also will say we'll make individual decisions whenever we can accommodate a situation for an individual kid. I actually wrote your question down because I think it's very important that we communicate internally in our group about that, because I think a lot of parents are in the same thought process that you are currently. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your, taking the question and considering that. If there's a way, maybe I could talk with the counselor at one of the, either Mehlville Home or the other one, to figure out what the best choice is. Because I don't quite understand what the wait is. Is it more likely she wouldn't get into Mehlville at Home if we needed it by fall, or is it more likely she wouldn't get to Spartan Academy if we decided to go there by fall? So that's the piece I don't really understand, and you may not as well.
Yeah.
So
I will tell you this for everyone: the Mosaic has a list that's on a lot. I mean, there's a waiting list, yes. The academies, there's a waiting list, yes. Melville at Home, since it's new and we're creating this based on interest, we don't have a list yet. I know that may not help you at all, but just so you have a better feeling of where we are now. But I'll have maybe someone reach out to you, Teresa, and see if they could help brainstorm with you and help spread that word. But I appreciate that.
Thanks. And I didn't recognize you at first with the beard. Thanks.
Oh, I usually have a mask on.
Corcos, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I assume the answer is going to be yes, but in reference to the summer session, the summer classes, will the teachers all be vaccinated by then, or have they already been vaccinated for those classes?
Our teachers received their second vaccination this week on Friday. So
Okay,
yes,
that's great.
Mhm.
All right.
Really exciting.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Just obviously that means the rest of the school year as well.
Well, yeah, that covers. Yeah, that covers. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Kate, I see you still have your hand up.
Yeah, I remember kind of Mosaic's virtual was kind of a separate entity as the rest of Melville at Home. Is that still going to be the case this coming year, or is it going to? Because I remember for the other at homes, it was supposed to be a combination of the schools, and Mosaic kind of had stuck with their own teachers. Is that going to be the same this coming year?
Dr. Bressler.
Say that again.
She's asking if Mosaic at Home will still be Mosaic at Home, or if they're transitioning back to traditional Mosaic and we will absorb the at-home children.
Yeah, our plan is to move to what we have put into place for Mosaic when we open the building. I would say this past year was not the best practice that we had developed as a school, yet we've transitioned and adapted to the situation based on we had a large number of students from Mosaic, and we tried to accommodate that so that we were able to do that. Next year, our plan is to move forward with the traditional planning that we have done with Mosaic in prior years.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you.
Let me see. Teresa, did you have another question? Your hand is up.
I did not. I will take that down. Sorry.
No problem. And then I think, yeah, Ray, thank you.
All right, I didn't see a way to raise my hand, so.
You're fine.
like a button, but I can. So my question is sort of the opposite. Like we have 3 kids, kindergarten, 4th grade, and 6th grade. So this year they're all at home because our oldest has diabetes. So like, you know, he's 12 and there's talk about like a vaccine in May or something. I'm not quite sure what, you know, what the talk is about, but so, you know, like we have a kindergartner, they're all doing fine at home, but, you know, they would like do better in person. They're ready to go back. But because of our oldest, like we would be hesitant to send any of them until he gets like a vaccine. So like, I guess my question is, you know, we have to decide by the end of this month if we're doing Melville at home, but then it sounds like we're locked in for the whole semester and we can't like put them in like person school if we want to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, the commitment we're asking families to make is at least the semester, if not the full year. So families would be allowed to transition back to in-person learning at the semester.
I will say that might be helpful for people too, if we look at it not as Melville at home and not Melville at home. Think about like Mosaic, for example, that's also a commitment for a semester as well, you know, a minimum of a semester. So it is enrolling in a program or enrolling in a school for that period of time. You know, and as much as we would like that flexibility to move back and forth, it sounds great, but in practice with students' academics and you know, the ability to be able to meet students' needs is very difficult. Not to say we're not willing to work with kids. I mean, that's what we're here for. But the best way to answer that is just like we do with programs or classes currently with Mosaic. So I do understand the predicament. I understand the difficult decision, though.
And it's really hard because, you know, like the kindergartner has done really well. Like he's learned so much, but it's like he needs to be in person, but we can't just send him because, you know, it's less likely that he'll get it, but he could still bring something home. So yeah, it's just really hard to decide for 3 different people, you know, different ages and different needs and whatever. So
yeah, I have 1 child and it's difficult. So having more than that, yes, more power to you. Thank you.
What other questions are out there?
Cole.
Christy, I see the Colbus have a question. Go ahead and unmute and let us know.
Courtney, go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, so I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but is there still a possibility that we'll have to do combined grades for a classroom?
I think I'll be very, I mean, we've been upfront about everything we've done, as honest as we can. At this time, no, we're not planning to do that. We have researched other virtual programs throughout, not just St. Louis, but many different virtual programs around the area as well as outside of our area. And yes, there are some awesome programs where they do have multi-grade level approaches taking place. Our plan right now is not to do that. The way to answer that question is that if that were to happen, we would be communicating with you prior to as early as we can as we're programming for future. So all I can say is that we're going to be as transparent as possible. We have nothing other than our commitment to be transparent to you and where we are. So hope that
we appreciate that
question.
And then also, I didn't know if you saw Abby Race had a really good question in the comments that I don't think was ever answered.
Thank you. Let me grab that. I am not even looking at that right now.
So Abby, let me try to take an attempt at that one. There's several questions that are kind of packed there, but first one was, what have we learned about collaborative learning this year and how to implement collaboration virtually? I will say this, having worked with the curriculum team in March and April of 2020 to try to get some semblance of, you know, organization and structure, and then continuing to work over the summer to try to make the second version of it better than the first. Doing collaboration virtually is not an easy process, and I think that we've found that when we can. I think a lot of people are valuing those in-person experiences even more than maybe what they did pre-pandemic. It doesn't mean that we don't want to engage, our virtual teachers or our virtual learners in that process, but we've learned that beyond just the ability to use tools, being in person has certainly had its benefits. But I think we've learned a lot in a virtual matter too. To answer your second part of that question, if classes decide to meet outside of their homes in certain spaces, how would teachers with children in multiple grades coordinate in collaboration so we can manage that? That's one of the things that we hope to, depending on, certainly the overall enrollment of the program, but one of the things that we would hope to be able to do is help organize some of those social opportunities, because we know kids also learn in a social manner, which is why at the very youngest of grade levels, play is really an important thing. And that's a difficult thing in which to be able to experience in a virtual manner. So even if students are still virtual, we are still working on ways in which to try to be able to create social opportunities, because we know the importance of in-person contact.
Abby, did that answer your whole question, or did you have any follow-ups for that? I see your hand is up.
I'm sorry. I'm at a ball game, so if you can't hear me, that's why I put it in the chat, because it's fairly loud. Okay, yes, it did. I just noticed, like, for instance, Miss Myers, she utilized some breakout rooms recently. The kids were working together, collaborating. I was just wondering, what have your educators learned from the experience, and just maybe hearing from some of them, what do they plan to implement next year? Because we have seen the value of it, and our kids thrive, in interaction with other children, just like anybody. So that's just a concern and question moving forward.
Ms. LeBrun, may I put you on the spot and you can talk about something that you've done with that, please?
Sure. So I utilize collaboration a lot. I'm Carrie LeBrun, by the way. I teach 8th grade ELA this year. Next year, I am hired to teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ELA. And so ELA, I think in the traditional classroom, we do a lot of collaboration in the traditional classroom, but a lot of people would think in the virtual setting, it's read this, type that, but we actually collaborated a lot in breakout rooms. For my argumentative unit, we did debates, and I held it just like you would a debate on television, but they did it in breakout rooms. I gave them topics that range from, do fairy tales, are they, just a good fun, childhood fun, or do they promote, poor stereotypes? And there were topics like, or plastics, should plastics be banned, or, do we need plastics in our lives? Things like that. And what they did is the students selected a side to argue. They were put in breakout rooms and they selected a side to argue. And then I facilitated as a moderator. So students would present their argument, and really I just went and I just held my hand, and then the next side went. And they felt comfortable presenting because, one, it was just 4 of them in a group. It wasn't a whole group presentation, whereas normally in a classroom, there's 20 of them. And they did really great. They shared, they did great research. They had valid points, and I was very impressed with these kids. So I would say we have a lot of collaboration in a virtual setting, or in my classroom. And I'm really impressed with what my colleagues did. What I'm looking forward to next year is these passionate educators that are all really committed to this program, and across curriculum, and doing some really cool things with them. So yeah.
Thank you, Ms. LeBrun. Ray, I see your hand is up.
I had a question about electives. So my 6th grader did the launch stuff the first semester, and because of the structure of it and his age, we really struggled with like that format. And so, this semester we've opted to do like home-based electives instead, which have worked better. But so I was just wondering, like, for the next year, is that going to be addressed because, I'm sure like the launch works better for like the high school kids, whereas like, for the middle school kids, it seemed like it was a bit much.
Yes, we agree. And we know that our Melville teachers are really exceptional. So what we're looking for is wherever possible, whenever possible, our teachers will be teaching the electives courses. We'll have a rotation of electives that the children will move through so that they're all having some variety. And they will be taught by our Melville teachers wherever possible. There could be an instance, it is always a possibility, where we just don't have the enrollment to be able to justify that and we have to use some outside vendors. If we do, know that I have been in communication with the people at launch and they have made some significant changes for moving forward for what they're going to be offering and what it'll look like with the rollout and everything for next year as well. So if we end up having to use them, even for some pieces, I do think that you'll find that there have been some solid improvements.
Okay. And I communicated with the teachers he had, and they were, really helpful and, really nice. It was just like, it was where I had to reach out separately to them. And so, if there was just more like contact between the students and the teachers, I think that it would have been fine. But, having to like check an email, like my, 12-year-old doesn't think to do that. So,
right.
And for
and
3
you
different
saw
classes.
in that presentation, we know that relationship piece is huge. So it's important for us that the students are participating in a synchronous method, that they're working with our teachers, and that they're able to, then they don't even have to log into a separate username, right? There were a lot of barriers that we worked really hard to be able to overcome and work around. And I think we did a really excellent job of it this year. But moving forward and reflecting on what we've learned this year, we know that the best thing would be if we could have our teachers teaching our students. Megan, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I had another quick question I just thought of. So my daughter's doing strings virtually, and we scored because she's actually the only one that's doing it. So she's getting one-on-one training. But do you know how long strings goes to? I know she's in 5th grade. No, 4th grade. She's going into 5th grade.
Brian?
Yeah, I got that one. So in terms of strings, the way our program is currently structured is that we have, Forder has an elementary site, and then we have some, around our middle schools where kids would have some experiences there. We're not 100% certain yet what that would look like in a Melville at home setting. That is, band, choir, and orchestra, and I guess one could probably argue theater as well, are courses certainly that are very difficult to do in a virtual manner. You certainly wouldn't be able to do it where one person would be online and a whole bunch of other people would be in person. So there are going to be a handful of courses that we may have to simply say, we won't be able to offer it in a virtual manner. It's one thing to take lessons, whether it's like the Suzuki model, which is a model of elementary string methods. It's one thing to do it in a one-on-one setting. It's something entirely different to do a string ensemble or a string orchestra. So we will be having some of those conversations again. I do anticipate some of those performing arts ensembles would simply be, if you want to be a 1/8 time student and you would like to come in for orchestra, that opportunity, if it works with your schedule, would be there. And then the remaining part of the time that student would be a virtual student of some capacity.
Okay, so because right now the strings like is virtual, but you're saying you're not sure if next year it will still be virtual, because that's not technically part of Melville at home anyway, right?
It's not. It's a little complicated in the sense that I've had a number of conversations about orchestra and strings and the development of our program. But at the end of the day, we have one elementary site that has strings, And then when you get into the middle school, it becomes a regular part of the school day. You know, and then obviously when you get into high school, it becomes a regular part of the school day too. So once we know what enrollment looks like, and I don't want to hide behind that piece, but it is true, you know, if whatever our numbers are, if we only have 1 or 2 students who are strings players, we would have to work with those 1 or 2 students in terms of that particular subject. And then we would have to work and figure out a way, what's the best way where we can be accommodating, yet still try to ensure that the experience is good for all.
One thing I want to say too, that I feel like every time we offer more options out there, it requires us as parents to make more decisions too, though. You know, like, so we're trying to make these options, and then I'm you know, really reflecting on what our parents are saying, and it becomes more difficult to make decisions too, you know. So we understand that, but I feel like we say a lot about it depending on staffing, but we're also being very honest and open with our parents that we're trying to do the best we can and offer those options while still having the management and be able to control, you know, a district of our size as well. I appreciate these questions though.
Okay, so yeah, I just was wondering, like, if they were obviously doing the virtual strings because more of COVID for this year, and that maybe they'll transition back to just in-person strings next year.
That would be the goal. That I think is always going to be the goal, because having a, you know, I've got a 6th grader and a 4th grader. The 4th grader is a violist. I can tell you that it has been difficult at times to be able to really get a great experience in a virtual manner. And that, given the fact, like, I've played for years and years and years. I grew up when I was an elementary school kid, middle school, high school kid, and college. You know, my son has a dad who has played, and it has still been a hard experience, you know, just because of dealing with everything else. And that's not how my teacher taught me. Well, I mean, the virtual teacher who you really have not laid eyes on for a good chunk of time. So it gets difficult, you know, where there's a lot of things we're balancing, and we want to be accommodating. We want to try to make sure that we can give people the experience that they're looking for. Some of that will come with having to make a choice. And I think that's always the hard part about it. As a former high school principal, you know, kids had to make choices and families had to make choices at times too. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we'll support you in the choices in which you make, whatever virtual education is ultimately going to be able to look like.
Thanks.
All right, we've got about 3 minutes left. Does anyone have any other questions? Jennifer?
It's not really a question, but I just want to say, though, I'm so impressed with our school district. You guys really have done a wonder. And the idea that we even have options. Some school districts don't have that at all. So it is hard decisions. And thank you for this meeting.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see, Mom's phone. What question do you have?
I just wanted to know about vaccinations for the kids. Are you going to require them to be vaccinated before they go to in-person school, if it's available?
So in terms of requiring vaccinations is not necessarily something a school district can do. You can do it at the post-secondary level. You know, you can see lots of colleges are now starting to go that particular route, but there are obviously some exemptions when it comes to that. So while we'll continue to encourage families, kids, as young and as old as what they can be when it's time to get a shot, we can encourage it. You know, we can't necessarily require it in terms of a link to enrollment or participation. Very similarly, you know, there are other shots that, you know, kids are I'd say required, but they're not technically required. There are some exemptions to certain things that school districts have to deal with. Most people do tend to get vaccinated, but just with everything else, it's not always a one size fits all. It's usually one size fits most.
Okay, thank you.
Well, oh, Abby, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, just one more question, Christy. I also want to say thank you guys. You've done a wonderful job creating this program. Our family has our kids have thrived. They've learned, progression has happened. So I just want to thank you guys and the educators that my children have had. Is it too soon to introduce the educators who will be part of this team next year? And also my second question, is there a minimum that you'll have to have enrolled per grade in order to not have the grade levels banned? I do have a second and third grader, and I specifically, want them to have their own identity and their own autonomy, because they're two boys and they compete as it is. So I'm just curious, and that is something that will weigh into our decision making. So is there a minimum that you have to have before you will decide if the grades will be banned together?
Christy, let me take that one. It's a two-part question. So Abby, the first part of that was in terms of who are the educators. Some of the folks in which you've seen, if you've been looking at all the participants, have been people who have been identified as, kind of our lead people with regards to our K through 8 Melville at Home in the future. These are the people that we would look to and work with in terms of really kind of laying the next level of foundation and movement forward. And then in terms of overall enrollment numbers at the grade level to grade level, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, however you want to look at it, those are still ongoing conversations. And, I used a really extreme example initially, and that was imagine if you only have one kid, but you've committed, 3 teachers, 5 teachers, 7 teachers, 10 teachers or so to a program. Well, I think we all know that that would not be a particularly fiscally responsible thing in which to be able to do. All that we can do right now is continue to take enrollments, see where we're at. We're willing to be as flexible as what we can in terms of grade bands that I know Christy had mentioned before. There is a law, a statute that says you can't grade band more than 2 consecutive grade levels. So the whole concept like the old K8s, one room schoolhouse, that's out the window. It's 2021. They don't do that anymore. So in terms of, what would that look like? Well, it could be like K1, it could be 2, 3, it could be 4, 5. And that's at the elementary. Obviously there are classes that can be 6 through 8, 6th grade through 8th grade, but you don't do that with 6th grade English, and you don't do that with 7th grade math, and you don't do that with those types of classes. So elective classes, theater, orchestra, drawing, there are some classes you can't do that with. So we continue to monitor the numbers. Christy and I talk once or twice a week about this particular topic, and we'll continue to do so through at least April 30th. And then we'll figure out where we're at. And if it means we have to reach back out, if it means, to say, hey, we're close or we're not close, we don't really know yet. What we don't know, 2 weeks from now to say, what are we looking at? I think we have some ideas, but right now they're ideas. And, I wish I could say, if we don't get to X number of kids, we can't run this grade, or if we don't get to X number of kids, we can't run this program. As I mentioned before, we're willing to be very flexible and accommodating with regards to virtual education. So there will be virtual opportunities no matter what happens. We just have to be able to figure out, where does Melville at Home really fall into all of this? And does it become a whole program where, it's an all 100% sort of commitment? Does it become a program that we've experienced a little bit this year with some teachers having to teach, some separate virtual classes and some separate in-person classes? What does it become? And we'll know a lot more answers within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Thanks.
Abby, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. I appreciate you giving us your time. Oh, TB123.
Yeah, that's my name's Teresa. That's just my email address. But I just want to thank you for having the meeting tonight. And you run a nice Melville Home program, and the teachers are very good. And I appreciate you all. And so just wanted to thank you.
Thank you so much. Friends, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to follow up by shooting me an email. You can also reach me at 467-7845. That's my number at school. You can call the main switchboard and just ask for Christy Matthews. You can also find me on our Melville homepage under the administration when you look at the staffing and contact us. I hope that you'll reach out with any questions that you have, and I will do my best to find answers for you. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.